Hello boys and girls, how are you? Welcome to John Robson Guitar Tuition. Now then, as you saw in the titles there, today we're looking at another Harley Benton, the CST24, which, as you probably gathered, is Harley Benton's homage to, or knockoff of, depending on your opinion, the Paul Reed Smith Custom 24. Now then, being a Harley Benton guitar, as you would imagine, this is aimed squarely at the budget end of the market. But we have an interesting comparison coming up later on between this £160 Harley Benton and this £1,600 Carvin Keisel CT6 California, which is being lent to me by one of my students, the very talented Mr. Rick Bobella. Thanks for that, Rick, you're a star. Now, one of the things that I often get a little bit frustrated with when I'm doing these videos is that this rubbish webcam doesn't really show these guitars that I'm reviewing off to their full potential. So earlier today I borrowed the wife's good SLR camera and I took some slightly better, I hope, pictures of this guitar. So to have a look at those and to hear how this guitar can sound, let's head on over to the gallery. Right, okay, if you grew up in the 1970s in the UK like I did, then you probably got that little reference I was making in that clip. Yes, bit of nostalgia does no harm, does it? So yes, what a lovely looking instrument, I think you'll agree. I mean, it does have one or two imperfections. I would hesitate to even call them imperfections. It's just areas where you can tell that this has been built down to a price. And to be fair, they are, you know, things that you have to look for. They don't kind of hit you in the face when you first see the guitar. We'll cover those later. But that piece of music in that clip was recorded on this guitar, and it does kind of demonstrate the versatility of the controls, because there were two guitar tones I was using there, a kind of a soft, warm jazz chord kind of sound, and a rather more biting, bluesy lead guitar tone. Now, I didn't use any different settings on the amp modeler to get those two tones. It was just messing around with the controls on the guitar. So you can go from a clean-ish sound, you know, it's still got a little bit of fur around the edges, but let's call it a vintage type clean sound, through to a really kind of all-out rock lead guitar sound. And to demonstrate that, here's a little clip showing me doing exactly that. And now let's have a look at the nitty-gritty of this guitar with a summary of the specifications. Okay, then let's have a look at what it is that you're getting when you buy one of these guitars. First of all, you have a two-piece bound mahogany body with a maple top, and on top of that maple top you have a rather gorgeous looking flamed maple veneer. You get a three-piece set bound mahogany neck. You get a roseacre, I think that's how it's pronounced, fretboard, which is thermally treated maple. We'll come back to that in a moment. You get 24 medium jumbo frets and pearloid dot inlays. The scale length is a standard PRS 25 inches with a graphite nut at the top. Pickups are Wilkinson WHHB Alnico 5 humbuckers, controlled by a three-way pickup selector, and a pair of controls consisting of a master volume and a master tone with a coil tap on the tone control. And finally, down at the bottom end, we have a wraparound style bridge. Right, so this roseacre material that the fretboard is made out of, what is it and why is it there? Well, a guitar of this type you would normally expect to have a rosewood fretboard, but rosewood is now becoming increasingly rare. It's covered by the CITES regulations, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. And hence budget guitar manufacturers are looking elsewhere for rosewood alternatives. Now this guitar used to come with an ebonol fingerboard, and ebonol, by the way, is just a fancy way of saying black plastic. And I have experience of playing a guitar with an ebonol fingerboard. This thing, the Epiphone Spotlight, which came out in the late 1980s, another PRS copy basically. And funnily enough, with a plastic fingerboard, it felt exactly like a plastic fingerboard. But this roseacre, I researched it online, looked at a couple of reviews of similar guitars to this, and everybody was saying, yeah, it's fine, no problem, don't worry about it. So I took the plunge, got this guitar, and I'm happy to report that, frankly, if you didn't tell me that this wasn't rosewood, I would never know. I mean, without having another identical guitar to this, with a rosewood fretboard, there's no way I can know if it's affecting the tone or not, but it feels and looks and plays just like a rosewood fretboard, so job done, really. That's roseacre, that's what it is and why it's there. Now, I mentioned this guitar does have a few sort of imperfections in the finish, so let's take a look at those now. There really are only 3 cosmetic flaws on this guitar that I can find anyway. Here's the first one. The edge binding, where it comes to an end on the lower horn, just seems to lack a little in the way of neatness. Speaking of the binding, if you look at the upper horn near the strap button, you'll see this tiny little blooper. And the only other flaw, if you want to call it that I can see on this guitar, is the bridge pickup mounting ring, which is warped ever so slightly out of shape, as you can see. So other than those rather minor cosmetic issues, how does this guitar measure up in terms of its general fit and finish, the build quality, the overall setup and just the general feel of it? Well, pretty good, I have to say. Straight out of the box, it did need a little bit of tweaking. I'll just briefly outline what I did there. Quarter turn on the truss rod just to get rid of a little bit of sag in the neck, and the bridge needed a little bit of adjustment too. The action was still a little bit high even after the truss rod adjustment, but you know, just a couple of turns on these bridge pillars here sorted that out, and the intonation was quite a long way out actually. And on the subject of intonation, don't let anybody tell you that with this kind of wraparound bridge you can't get perfect intonation. You can. I've done it. Okay, what you do is, don't know if you can see there, but on each one of these bridge pillars you have an individual Allen key adjuster to set the overall kind of angle of the bridge, and then you have the B and G string saddle there, which just moves independently just to kind of set the overall thing perfectly, and you can. It takes longer to do than on, say, a Les Paul or a Strat where you've got individual saddles for each string, but the benefits of having this kind of wraparound bridge are sustain, basically improved tone. I used to have a Gordon Smith GS2 guitar, which, if you're not sure what that is, that's like a twin humbucker Les Paul Junior style thing, and it had a really primitive wraparound bridge, no compensation at all. It literally was just the stop tailpiece off the back end of a Les Paul. And yeah, the intonation was quite shonky once you started getting up to the 12th fret and beyond, but the sustain was incredible. I ended up swapping that bridge out for like a badass style bridge with the individual saddles where you could intonate it properly, and I got perfect intonation, but the guitar lost a good 50% of its sustain. This isn't plugged in at the moment, okay, and I'm going to try and show you just how loud and resonant this guitar is acoustically. I'll just strum a couple of open chords so you get an idea. Hopefully this will come across. I don't know how well that came across on this little microphone I'm using here, but trust me, it is a really kind of resonant, sustaining guitar. You know that feeling where you can feel the wood of the body vibrating against your ribcage when you're playing it? There's lots of that in this guitar. Once I'd lowered the action and sorted the truss rod and everything out, there was nothing else to do. Whoever has done the sort of factory setup on this guitar needs a medal, frankly. The nut slots are beautifully cut. I mean, seriously well done. The action at the first fret is perfect, absolutely effortless, and even with quite a low action that I've got on it now, there is not a jot, not a scintilla of fret buzz anywhere on the neck, no bends choking out or anything like that. It genuinely feels like a solid, well-made, substantial, dare I say it, professional grade instrument. And it's £165. Was it 160 or 165? Can't remember. I'd have to look at the invoice. But let's say £165. I mean, that's Squire Affinity Strat kind of money. Well, more than that now, I think. But you know, it's peanuts for a guitar that is this well sorted. And yeah, it feels substantial, it feels solid, it's you know, a good guitar. You would not have this pinned as a sub £200 guitar if you were to pick it up and didn't know the price. So what does it sound like? Well, that's what we're going to find out next. This next clip is this guitar being played in a track where I'm using various different pickup combinations and amplifier settings, and then after that you'll hear me play exactly the same piece of music on the Carvin Keisel CT6 California that my good friend Rick Babella is lending me tomorrow when he comes for his lesson. So this is this guitar in a track, and hopefully you can hear just how good it sounds. So there you have it, a £160 guitar and a £1,600 guitar side by side. Now of course there are differences between the two instruments. I'm not going to tell you that there aren't. But the law of diminishing returns stipulates that a £1,600 guitar is never going to be 10 times as good as a £160 guitar. It just doesn't work like that. The main difference I noticed when I was recording the guitars was actually that the Carvin, because it only has a 22 fret neck, that means that the neck humbucker is in what I think of as the correct place, as defined by the Gibson Les Paul. And you probably noticed that on that that little demo I did, the Carvin nailed that neck humbucker Les Paul / Gary Moore tone on that second verse a little bit more convincingly. That's not to say that the neck humbucker on this guitar doesn't give a creditable performance, because clearly it does. So there you have it, two very different guitars in terms of cost. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions. And if you live on Teesside in the northeast of England and you would like some tailored one-to-one guitar tuition, then get in touch with me via the details at the end of this video. And if you like listening to guitar music, and frankly why are you here if you don't, then you might want to check out my new album called The Whiskey Made Me Do It. It's full of instrumental, bluesy, melodic rock guitar playing. And even though I say so myself, it is really rather good. So you can get that on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, all the usual places. Check it out. And with that, I'll say goodbye and leave you till next time. Bye for now, folks. Have fun.